Hey, good evening. Good evening.
Hey,
Coach
welcome
Judy.
back.
Yeah, Coach Judy here with Judy Prokopiak Coaching and Dr. Shu or Nick Schumacher with Premier Chiropractic and Performance. We're here again this week to offer you some more tips and tools and insights and strategies to really overcome what's going on in your life, in your sports, and your athletics. So I'm gonna let Dr. Shu go first this week and tell a little bit about a little recap from last week and a little bit about who we are and why we're doing this thing.
Yeah. So, welcome back. We're in part two of our three-part series here. Last week we talked about finding opportunities to, during this uncertain time, to really take advantage of and find different ways and different areas of our lives, whether it's in sports or outside of sports, and develop those areas. Kind of taking responsibilities elsewhere, whether it might be some time management issues, different weaknesses on the field or on the court where we could take advantage of and develop those, such as team leadership characteristics, things like that, and taking responsibility to do those things, such as reaching out to your coaches, reaching out to your teammates, sitting down, writing things down, and really taking a deep look at where those developmental opportunities lie. This week, we're going to dive into talking about the journey back to competition. The, better defining those opportunities. Yeah, let's jump back in the pool. I think we're all ready. I know I am. But kind of defining our journey back. Last week we defined those opportunities. This week we're developing those opportunities, making and changing our routines to what the normal is now for each one of us, and getting that road back to competition. And then, we'll talk about next week when it comes. But that's kind of what we're going to dive into. I like to call this journey the grind. I'm always trying to grind it out, whether it's, when I was playing sports as a former baseball player in college, or nowadays running my own chiropractic practice. There's days where we just have to grind it out. So I always like to refer to that as the grind. So we're going to talk about enjoying the grind.
Enjoying the grind. All
That's
right.
right.
I love that. That sounds really hard though. I'm like a mindset coach. That like grind part is
Yeah.
but I'm gonna honor it for you. I'm gonna honor it
Okay.
today. Be like, I'm gonna make the grind like good. Like, right? The grind
That's right.
is good, right?
Oh, it's
It's
definitely
not
not a
hard.
bad thing.
No, it's not hard. But I have a thing there going, see, this is how it works, people. You have to do your own mindset work.
That's right.
Always. um, yeah, so one of the things I heard yesterday was that, we were talking about creating routines and the new normal or whatever, but I heard this and they were talking about calling it the new abnormal because like, right? It
Right.
really isn't the new normal. It's the new abnormal because it just feels so abnormal. But because there really never kind of was a normal, right? I mean, it's like before 9/11, we didn't have to take off our shoes and belts and carry things in a little Ziploc bag, shampoo this big, right?
Yeah.
And so, that became our new normal and our new normal. So, but I like that kind of it's a new abnormal. Like let's just embrace that because otherwise we're waiting for the next new normal and we don't know what's coming.
And you really can't move on until you embrace it. Until you kind of sit down and like, hey, look, this is what's going on. Let's deal with it. Doesn't matter what your outlook is on it. Let's look at the facts. Let's research it. Let's find ways to improve. Let's come together as a team and as former athletes. And I know we've been talking to a lot of athletes, and they kind of have that team mentality, and you got to work together. So you kind of develop your own normal too. We talked about that a little bit last week, and we'll talk about it more this week. But until you embrace that and know that there's change and it's not ever going to come back to exactly what it is, then you really can't move on.
Right,
I think
right.
that's the first step, and in defining that journey.
Yeah, the acceptance that it is what it is, but it'll
Yep.
be what you make it, right? It is the
Exactly.
circumstances are the facts, like in a court of law, right? They're the facts. How we feel about it, what we're thinking about it, what we're telling ourselves about it, like the stories, right? We talked about that last week, the stories we're telling ourselves about what coulda, woulda, shoulda been. I should have had my senior year. I should have had this. I should have been to the NCAA. I should, whatever, right? We're telling ourselves all of this stuff. They shouldn't have canceled school. They shouldn't have closed all the things. They shouldn't have canceled the Olympics and postponed, right? We can get stuck in all of that instead of really just accepting what is. Because when we don't accept, that's where the suffering comes, right? Because we want something to be different, and then we're just wanting it to be different isn't going to change it, right? But changing your actions and changing your behavior and changing your thoughts around it. So tell me, what does this look like when when someone's grinding it out? Like what?
It can look many different ways, and it can change pretty quick. It can change day to day, week to week. It can change hour to hour. It depends on what you're doing and your mindset. I mean, it all comes down to mindset. You can enjoy the most rigorous thing out there, or you can just be miserable through it. I think the toughest thing to do is when you're in that grind mentality and you don't really have the best outlook. The hardest thing to do is when you're in it is to change it. So the best thing is to, before you start, take that time to get your mind right. Because if you don't have to worry about getting your mind right, and you already have that positive mindset and know that you have something on your schedule today that you just don't want to do, you're not feeling it, it's going to make it that easier to get through.
Yeah.
But again, the grind can be, the grind is the entire process. When it becomes negative, can be a lot of different things. I think that's what I'm trying to say there. The grind should be positive. And that's what our message is this week, is that this whole normal thing, this whole creating your routine, let's make it positive. Let's find ways to make it positive. Now, those negative things might pop up a little bit more because we don't have those coaches right on top of us, whether it's your strength coach or your head coach or position coach telling you what to do. You don't have that plan written out in front of you unless they've been doing their due diligence of sending out virtual workouts or things like that for you to do. But again, then you might not have the equipment to do that. So are you either going to make the excuse, hey, I can't do that. I'm not really sure how to do that. Or are you going to start asking questions, start figuring out, and learn how to adapt and overcome? And that's the grind itself right there. And that's what's going to separate when we get back to this, and kind of what we talked about last week are those players and those athletes that accepted that grind, find those opportunities to improve and change their mindset where they might not were before. Those are the ones that are going to come back stronger than ever. Again, they might not be the most talented players, but the ones that figure it out, get their stuff done, they have a great opportunity to come back stronger than ever.
Yeah, I think we talked about it last week. We want this to be your comeback story.
Exactly.
Whoever you are.
That's right.
This to be your comeback story.
Whatever your story is, whatever sport you play, it's a great opportunity to write your story right now, and hopefully it's a good one. Don't let it be a bad one.
Right. You get to write it. Get your pen out. You get to write it. Yeah, I've talked to quite a few swimmers, and they've been out of the pool a long time, and so they've really had to adapt, improvise, and overcome. They really have had to do some different things. I mean, mentally, like that's a huge shift for any athlete, but then physically, like your that time in the water is going to be very different. But at least like you're doing everything that you can, right? You're doing everything that you can, and if you're doing more than the person, you know in the next town or the next thing or whatever, you're going to come back and you're going to be like, hey, I'm strong. And you don't even know what, like maybe you're out running more, right? I'm just going to use swimming as an example. Maybe you're a swimmer, but maybe you started running more, doing something else, or doing some kind of other activities. And so when you go back to swimming, yes, there's going to be a little gap there while you're trying to reestablish, some things and your stroke and all of that. But you don't know how that's going to serve you, right? You don't know. So be willing to just be curious and be willing to just grind it out and be willing to just try, because whatever it is, it's going to help you. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Whatever you do is still going to be better than nothing, right?
Right.
And then you can improve from there, right? We can't actually create a better habit if we don't even have a habit. We can't get a better routine if we don't have a routine,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
you just talking about this just popped in my mind. We don't have those practices as a team. We don't have those simulated games or simulated meets. Heck, you might not even have a long enough pool to really practice and try to beat your times. So that's where that creative measure comes into play that we talked about last week, is trying to find those little milestones and those little competitive games that you can play with yourself to test those, to see, hey, is this extra running that I'm doing every morning working? Or is
Yeah.
this, do I need to change something up? So it's, there's a lot of mental games that you can play with yourself. But there's those physical standpoints and things that we need to be creative with to test those milestones.
Yeah. And I think the bottom line is like believing that you're doing something, like, right, knowing that you're taking action, right? That's where your confidence comes from. I'm doing something, I'm getting better. Maybe you weren't great at push-ups before, and now, maybe your goal will be, I need to be able to do 100 push-ups, like, right? Or maybe you weren't, maybe your core wasn't as strong as you'd like it to be. Maybe, that's it. Or maybe you really didn't run at
Yeah.
all. And so, right? So challenging yourself in a new way, because that's going to really build your confidence, right? That's really going to help, because as we get into the next week's talk, it's all about getting ready for that performance. And if you don't feel like you've prepared, if you don't feel like you've done the things that you need to do, you're going to have lack confidence moving forward. You're going to have self-doubt. You're going to have insecurities. So it's really important to take the action, and do something, because then that also builds momentum, right? So, and I just want to speak to that 1 second, is that, when you say, hey, I'm going to run 3 days this week, I'm going to run, or I'm going to run every day, or I'm going to do push-ups every day, like, right? When you set this goal for yourself, or this routine, or you tell yourself, I'm going to do this thing, and then when you follow through on that for yourself, right? You said, I said I was going to do it, and I did it. And when you do that consistently, your confidence goes way up,
Yeah.
right? Way up, right? Like because you're like, hey, I have my own back. I know that I can do anything I put my mind to, right? But the opposite is also true. When you tell yourself, I'm going to get up in the morning and go for a run, and then you like stay in the bed.
Hit that snooze button one too many times.
Yeah, right. If you
All
say and it's easier, like when your parents are paying for the coaching, and you're right, and your teammates are waiting for you, or you're in a carpool, or you're at school, like whatever. It's easier when, and this is what we're talking about, it is easier when there's already structure around it. But when you have to get your butt out of bed and go for a run by yourself, like, and you're a swimmer, you don't like running, it's not going to be the easiest challenge. But so that's where your confidence goes down, right? Because you're like, see, I can't do it. See, I don't even, I don't have any discipline. See, you start telling yourself those stories, and that will not serve you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to throw that out there for a minute.
And it's troublesome to see, but those negative thoughts are weigh a lot more on you than the positive thoughts. You can have 100 positive thoughts in a day, but you have that one negative one, it can outweigh those 100 positive thoughts. So really getting that mindset early on and trying to maintain it, to not go into that negative side of things, it can go a long way.
Yeah, it requires a lot of attention and intention. And that is kind of what we're talking about here, is that really, get a buddy that you can text with every day. Hey, did you go for your run? Hey, did you do your right? Let's do a push-up. Get online. There's push-up challenge, there's plank challenges, there's squat challenge, whatever. Do 100 squats a day. There's all kinds of challenges. Or make up your own, right? Get your teammates. We talked about this before, being a leader. Get your teammates, don't wait for your coach to create these things. They might never do it. Right? You get to decide. This is your sport. You get to decide what you're gonna, what you want it to be.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to wait for anything else or anybody else. You can just decide, right? There's the power in decision. Decide and then commit and then take the action.
Right.
So, all right. So then we want to talk a little bit about, this is sort of moving into sort of this, keep focused on the goals. Right? Keep focused forward and on the goals. And you wanted to talk about that, goal setting and uncertainty.
Well, we kind of mentioned a little bit how the coaches aren't really there to provide goals a whole lot right now. You don't have your strength coaches right now to plan. I mean, some of you might, depending on the situation you're in. Some colleges are doing some virtual stuff, things like that. But you haven't really been able to, especially for the spring sports, you haven't been in that team setting long enough to really know what you're capable of. A lot of athletes didn't even get to compete this year, whether their sport didn't start yet or really just kind of got started and then came to that abrupt end. So having those goals, I'm sure a lot of goals that you set in January or at the beginning of your season have changed. One, not knowing really if you can compete this year or not, but some of those personal goals. And like last time, we talked about defining some of those smaller opportunities, but this time, trying to think about what it's going to look like when competition does start. What are you doing right now in this grind to stay committed to the goals, staying focused, putting that step forward, and reiterating a little bit. As long as we keep that momentum forward, it doesn't matter the size of the step you take that day. As long as that next foot is going in front of the other one, it's fine. Sometimes it can stand still. Sometimes you need a little break. But as long as we're not moving backwards, we're good. And working towards those goals that we're defining and staying focused, keeping those blinders on, because there is a lot of distraction right now. There's a lot of easy ways to be like, hey, I'm not going to do this today. I don't have anybody. I don't have my teammate knocking on my door, at 7 a.m. trying to get me out of bed to make practice or, early swim or whatever it might be. So you got to hold yourself accountable and stay focused. And a lot of good ways to do that is to write things down. First and foremost, write your goals down. It could be smallest goals, biggest goals. What are you going to do day to day? What are you going to do once, competition starts back up? And kind of keep that regular habit every morning. Write something down. What am I going to accomplish today? What am I going to accomplish during my workout today? Or what am I going to accomplish this week during my workouts? And set different goals, small ones, big ones, and time measurements too. Short ones, like I said, what am I going to do today? What am I going to accomplish this week? What am I going to accomplish in the next month? And keep working towards those smaller goals and really do a good job and do your due diligence of defining what that is for yourself.
Yeah, it's true, right? All of this, all of this uncertainty can make us just feel like, well, what's the point in setting a goal, right? Kind of like, you have a business, I have a business, 2020, none of this stuff was in the business plan, right? But, but we can't just be like, well, okay, I guess we'll just do nothing while we wait for everything to open back up. So, but I want to just expand a little bit on kind of what you said. And so number one, create the goal, even if you don't know if it's going to happen, right? If your goal is next year, you want to be the state champion, you want to go do a triathlon, you want to do whatever it is, right? Like, right, win the Super Bowl, whatever, like, right? Like, it doesn't even matter. What matters is that you choose something, right? We can't get into the story of how, when, are they gonna, is it gonna happen, is it, right? And then from that place, like, what would you do if that was still your goal? Like, right? Who you decide to be, like, right? You're going to be, what does a state champion do? How does a Super Bowl champion, player show up every day? Like, right? Because then we're being the person, right? Then we're being the person that we want to be, right? We're becoming that person. So have the big goal. Like, it doesn't even, like, guess what? A lot of people had a goal of going to the Olympics this year. Didn't quite work out, but they had the goal and they just kept working toward it. Now they move the goal till next year. Are they going to sit around and go, I don't know, maybe they won't do it next year either? No, they have to just keep moving forward. You just have to keep moving forward. So it's a great mindset hack to say, you know what, I'm just going to plan for it anyway. And if people tell you, well, you don't know if we're going to even have that sport in the fall, you don't know if you're going back to school, like, just put it aside and say, you're right, I don't know if we are or we aren't, but I'm moving forward as if. I'm moving forward as if it's happening. I'm moving forward as if I'm going to do that. I'm just moving forward, right? And then you talked a little bit about kind of celebrating the wins or whatever. Maybe I made that up in my head. I don't know.
No,
but
yeah,
but like celebrating like the behaviors, right? That, like, because if you're going to go be this champion, and if you're going to run the triathlon, or if you're going to do whatever, right? It's like, what would you do? Act as if it's all happening, right? Show up. Okay, maybe you don't have a pool to go to. You'll figure that, do something else, right? Just be like,
yeah,
okay, well, I don't have a pool to go to, or whatever, right? I don't have my team to play with. Um, but celebrating the activity and the behaviors, right? Honoring the fact that, like, I'm doing the thing, I'm showing up for myself, right? And that's where you get the momentum and the confidence to keep going.
yeah.
Right.
There was
And of course there's visioning and all of that stuff, which,
yeah. I mean, speaking on past experience, there was a point when I was coming back from shoulder surgery, um, and rehabbing and getting back with the team in the weight room and things like that. Um, there was a point where I almost enjoyed practice and rehabbing back those small personal gains that I was making rather than competing on the field. I really enjoyed just, like, I keep using the term, but grinding it out. I enjoyed waking up every morning. I was like, all right, what is coach going to have on that board for us in the weight room? What running are we going to have to do on the field today? I'm just going to get after it and let's do it. And those were ways that I could see myself improving because, like I mentioned, I wasn't the most talented. I wasn't out there throwing hard. And, I didn't have a lot of opportunities in games early on in my career. So I didn't have those opportunities to prove myself. I had to find opportunities to prove myself in the training and the journey and things like that. So you have to learn to enjoy those things. And like Coach Judy said, celebrate those little wins. They mean a lot. They really do.
they really do. They really are the secret to, because guess what? You know what? You could do everything right. I think we talked about it last time. You can do everything right and break world records, and you can still be fifth place at the Olympic trials and
Yeah.
not get to go. So it's always about becoming the best version of yourself, the next best version of yourself. And this is the way you do it. You create new habits of being, right? How does somebody go from couch potato to 5K, right? They see themselves as a runner. They're like, I'm somebody who runs now. Like, right? Now I'm somebody who runs. Like, right?
Just dive
Um,
into that mindset.
yeah.
That's what you want to be
And
when you see yourself that way.
yeah, right. And they start hanging out with runners, and you start entering run races, and you start expanding your running, and you get a little faster at the running, and you start learning about running, and you start eating better, and you start sleeping better. right? So all of the things that go along with that. And I just wanted to add, like, if you're, a young person or an athlete, or, you help work with athletes, like, these skills overlap into life. Because guess what? As an adult, no one is going to, wake you up and say, hey, time to get up and go to work. Like, right? You have to lead yourself eventually. So this is a great opportunity to start doing it. No one's going to wake you up and say, hey, go feed the baby. Like, right, you have a little one, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So no one's gonna wake you up and say that. No one, like, we can take.
She'll wake me up and let me know though.
Yes, of course you. And that's good. You got that. That's fine.
Yeah.
But it's all about that personal responsibility and personal accountability. And so, it really is part of the process, is part of the journey. And the more that you can really embrace it and enjoy it, and be in it, like, right, and not just be focused on the outcome, like, right, you're focused on getting better, right? I remember I had a lot of swimmers, and one of them, I just remember one time, one of them, like, she was one of my best swimmers, and she, swam the race. We were at a weigh meet. She swam the race. She did great. No, I won't say that she did great. She won, and she comes running over to me. I don't know, she was 11, right? She was not in the new mindset that I taught her after that. But so she was 11, and she comes over, Coach Judy, I won. And I was like, um, did you do any of the things that we've been working on? Like, right? Your flip turn, you were breathing off the wall. You breathed into the wall. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. What about this? Your start was this. You didn't do a best time. Like, there was nothing about that race that was quality.
Right.
Nothing about that race of anything but you came in first. Who cares? What's the point? Like, right? Like, she didn't put in, her goal was to win. But I was like, I wanted her to see the bigger goal, which, guess what? She just graduated college, and she had a full ride scholarship and all of that. But if I would have let her go on with the winning mindset instead of, in addition to, how are you going to be better next meet? How are you going to be better next time?
Right.
Right. And so yes, we want to have the goal, and we want to try to get there, and we want to achieve that. And that's a great thing to pull us forward. But ultimately, it's who you become in the process. It's always like, right, when you start out in college or high school, you're in ninth grade, and you're a different person when you are 12th grade. You go to college, you're a freshman. When you graduate college, when you got out of chiropractic school, you're a different person, right? It's like,
Exactly.
right?
Because I mean, none of us are going to play our sport forever. There's going to be an end to that. And I think prime example is 2020. A lot of people had that cut way shorter than what they thought. A lot of these seniors, whether it's high school or college, I mean, their careers were gone within a couple weeks of their spring season this year. So
yeah.
And then who knows what the fall's going to have for college athletics or even high school athletics at this point. And who knows what professional sports are doing. I mean, I don't think baseball is going to play this year, and hopefully
right?
Back to it soon. But you just never know when that end's going to come, whether it's injury or there's a new virus that shuts everything down. You just never know, and that's when those little things that you've developed, those responsibilities and becoming who you are going to play big dividends on the outside world and in the business.
Right. The resilience factor and because, again, you don't know when, people let go from jobs. There's a lot of people out there that also thought that they had job security, and that may not be the case, right? And so, this is really how life is. It's just like when it comes all at once like this, it's kind of challenging. Because so many people are experiencing it. But I can tell you that we talked about this last time, that there are lots of people that are always experiencing all of these kinds of things, right? They're experiencing grief and trauma and injuries, or they were in a car accident, or they had to have surgery and then they could never play again, or some Olympic movement happened or something, or some virus came, right? It's just like, so all kinds of things, happen in the world, and it's just important for us to realize that, like, we have the ability to take back control of our mind, of what we do next, of our attitude, of how we show up in the world. And yeah, it can be pretty traumatic to like have something that you were expecting and looking forward to, and just kind of cut out from underneath you. And be sure to get some support around that, so that you're not, I mean, that can be kind of traumatizing, especially if you've been in a sport for a long time and you were expecting to have that final thing happen, right? So be sure you talk to somebody. Please feel free to call me or Dr. Nick, and just talk to somebody about what you're feeling about that. It's important.
Right.
All right. So I think the last thing is, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but staying proactive. No, you want to talk about physical. We already talked about that. So kind of the physical parts of this, staying on,
Yeah.
staying focused on injury prevention and all that. That's your
Right.
wheelhouse.
So, I mean, we've been talking a lot about the mental side of things, which in all sports, it's like Yogi Berra said, it's 90% mental, the other half is physical. Um, but there is that physical aspect. Not being back in competition or at school or with your team, um, there's less access to athletic trainers, the training room, those physical things that will help you stay in that top shape and stay away from injury. So, a lot of things that you can be doing on your own to kind of help you recover better, um, stay away from injuries. And also, if you're rehabbing an injury during this time, maybe you just had, um, Tommy John or something like that right before the season, and you're still rehabbing, and you don't have access to that school. There's a lot of stuff that you can be doing um, during this time, and kind of focusing on some of those weak points too physically. A lot of things that I see with athletes, um, and the general population too, is mobility. Mobility is one of the biggest things that we all can improve on. A lot of injuries take place because we don't have joint to joint mobility and able to control specific movements within our body and with our respective athletic movement, whether it's a golf swing, baseball swing, the breaststroke, whatever it is. But this is a great time to kind of break down mechanics, break down the way our body moves, and focus on those mobility issues. Um, if you go on to my Instagram, which is Premier Chiro Jax, I have um, a lot of different um, issues that can arise during athletic performance, or a lot of injuries. And what I've done is created little videos of certain exercises or stretches or mobility exercises that you can do at home. So if you're having a specific neck injury, or you're feeling like you're not having a lot of shoulder mobility and you need to work on that a little bit, go on that Instagram. There's a lot of things that you can find on there. But at home, make sure that we're warming up properly. I'm not a huge fan of static stretching where we're going down and touching our toes um, before athletic performance, whether it's you're just in the weight room or you're actually going to compete. Getting the body moving, getting the blood flowing. Research has shown that we're going to do perform a lot better, less injury prone to injury if we have more of that active warm up rather than that static warm up. So a lot of calisthenics. Make sure that we're getting that heart rate going, a slow walk or slow jog, 5 to 10 minutes, and then we can go into some mobility routines that you can do, whether it's for the lower extremities, the upper body, things like that. The other issue too that I see a lot of is spinal instability, and that's that's my bread and butter. Everybody to you know relate chiropractic to the back and the spine. Yes, that's what we do, but we focus on the entire body, all extremities, neck, um, hips, knees, toes, everything. It's all connected. But biggest thing that kind of comes down to that we can all work on as well is spinal stability. And we always talk about, we talked about earlier, is about the core work and making sure we have a strong core. But a lot of people think that, oh, that's just these muscles up front, our six pack, things like that. Well, if you open up an anatomy book and look at the spine, there are hundreds of little small muscles that connect all these small, intricate joints and bones in our back, and they play a big role in how we perform. And if we can't not necessarily activate those muscles, but if they're not performing and they're not strong in certain motions and certain ways that we can move our body, then those bigger muscles and joint areas are prone to injury. So again, I have a lot of specific core stabilization exercises that you might not see a whole lot of, you know, on the outside world, but that I've kind of focused on and researched about. You can find those on my Instagram. But again, if you live in the Jacksonville area, feel free to contact me on Facebook or Instagram, or call the office at Premier. We can sit down and talk, kind of figure out what issues you're having, and kind of come up with a plan that we can do in the office and you can do at home to kind of help with those mobility issues. Focus on core stabilization, spinal stabilization, and overall enhancing your performance, whether it's on or off the field. So I'm here for you as always. You can reach out in different ways, but always here to just talk, and we can figure out a plan moving forward. So
Yeah.
again, work on those mobility issues. Find those weak points in your physical activity. We can come up with a plan moving forward on those, and that always spinal stability is a major thing we can all improve on.
Yeah. So I love that, right? It's like people are, especially like maybe you're a swimmer and you're going to get back in the pool. You gotta work on those mechanics, right? You got to really work on, otherwise you are going to end up injured, right? That was a big thing for me. I was all about the drills, like back to the basics. And so whatever you're doing, especially as you get back, right? We're talking about the process and enjoying the journey, and things are starting to open back up and pools are opening a little bit and different things are happening. But or whether it's you're getting back together with a small group of, like, concentrate on the things that right? Have somebody videotape you if you need. Have somebody like, make sure that you're doing your drills, make sure that you're warming up, right? So I love all of that because it's so important. Otherwise, like, we get it, that drive to get back in and just to go, like, right, go 100 miles an hour, but that's where the injuries can happen, and that because you're not really prepared, or it's like the workouts are going to be too hard and you are not ready for them, and then you're going to get injured, right? So know yourself, and whatever you're doing, whether you have a coach or whether you're doing it yourself or whether you're, like, right, we get that you have this desire and this drive and ambition and goals and things, but we want to make sure that you are being safe. We want to make sure that you are you're not setting yourself up for more disappointment later on because now you have an injury, right? So we really want to focus on that. So I love that. And I love how you talk about, spinal stability because, right, we're talking about mental and emotional stability.
Yeah.
And we're talking about spinal stability because, it's agility and stability, right? It's like you have to have a flexible nervous system, and you got to have the growth mindset, and you have to have, the flexible spine and the mobility and all of that for life. Like, this is, yeah, we're talking about sports here, but this is for life. These are just life skills, and sports is such a great place to learn it. And sports is such a great way to embody these experiences and really take that and turn it into useful and helpful, I can't even think of the word, but useful and helpful ways of being in the world. So yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to point out, you just speaking on of how all this stuff can relate to life, and what I preach to all my patients and anybody that I talk to with about what I do is I like to look at each person as an athlete. We're all built the same. We all have the same joints. We all have the same muscles. We all move in the same ways. We're all built the same. Now, the difference is how we've developed our body over our lifetime and those, smaller um, um, traits that we have, whether it's fast twitch fibers or slow twitch, but we're all built the same. So the way we move is all the same, but the levels that we do it at, whether it's elite level and we can run a 60 and a 6.5 or in 8 second 60, that's the difference. But the the older population and the younger population, they're all built the same, but the way they've treated their bodies over that lifetime is that's the way they end up. So learning how to take care of your body through this is going to help you learn how to take care of body down the road as well.
Yeah, yeah. And, things that happen to you, whether it's injury or illness or other, factors, we've got the epigenetics that play into it, right? Our environment and how, food we eat, the thoughts we think, and the people we're around and all of that. And then we have genetics, which plays a role in a lot of it, right? We have different elements. But then you're right. It's like we also have the same basic, um, structure, and we can always improve on where we were, right? We can always, or at least maintain, right? When you get to a certain age, sometimes you're just maintaining, right? You're just trying to keep from going backwards, right? You just want to maintain that functionality, right? So I think, I think it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of, say, former athletes, because we're, not competing anymore or something, but, still moving and doing stuff. But it's so interesting. I think that we tend to be really harder on ourselves about our physical capabilities or things like that, because we know what we're capable of, because we know what we achieved. And we're not saying that when I was 16 I achieved this and I should be able to do it now, but we know the mindset that it takes. We know we know what. And so when we don't do that, we sometimes, I think, we beat ourselves up more than somebody who would consider themselves a non-athlete.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Somebody who, they did not play a sport, right? They did not do that. They they did something else, right? They whatever, right? Or a dancer or whatever. But I think that we tend to be harder on ourselves. And I think that makes it a challenge to actually maintain some habits and routines and things. I don't know. That's just what I've noticed. I don't know if you noticed that in any of your kind of former athletes.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
I'm just speaking for myself.
I thought you were talking to me.
Right? It's really powerful to be aware of that concept.
We
Right? We have this
supporters, but are also our biggest haters. I mean,
yeah.
our
And our identity was so wrapped up in all of that. And it's really I'm way older than you, but I've done a lot more work on this concept. But it definitely is, there's just a part of us that feels like I should be doing more. I know what it takes. I should do this. I should do that. I I'm just being lazy, right? We can get into all of this nonsense in there. And I didn't mean to drift off into that topic, but it is important, because if you're an athlete, I want you to not beat yourself up, going for, like, okay, maybe you've taken a break. Maybe you didn't quite get it all together. Maybe you were really gung-ho for a little while and then you kind of fell off. Maybe you're eating potato chips. Maybe you're watching movies. Maybe you're like telling yourself, I don't know that I want to play this sport anymore, right? It's like, who knows what is going on in your head right now, right? But really try to have self-compassion and a little self-love, and just say, hey, I've never been through this before. I'm doing the best I can, but what could I do, right? So you're not going to get anywhere by beating yourself up. Like, you're not going to hate yourself into being a better athlete. You're not going to hate yourself into being a better, human being on the planet. Like, right? So let's try to just have, we have enough stuff going on in the world. We need to just have compassion on ourselves, have compassion on other people. You know what? Maybe you're out there doing the thing, being the person, showing up, running, doing all the stuff, and maybe your buddies aren't, right? Maybe your friends aren't doing it. And so, don't judge them either, right? You can be encouraging and nurturing, and you know what? Maybe you're just going to be the role model. Like, you just go out and do the thing, and then, they get to be them. You just get to love them, just like you get to love yourself, All right. So on that note, I think we'll, hey, people watching, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, we'll be on for a couple more minutes. So if you have any questions, or you have something that you want to talk about as far as dealing with all of these, changes that are going on in the world. I mean, we can't answer everything, but we have no answers. But we could help you figure out where you might be struggling. If you're struggling with, maybe you have an athlete at home who's kind of like lost and confused, or maybe you're an athlete and you're a little bit lost and confused, overwhelmed, or maybe you are working out, but you're struggling to stay motivated, right? You're struggling to kind of stay inspired because you don't see the bigger picture, right? And so, we're just going to do a little recap here, but if you have some questions, then, type it in and we'll look at that. But, we talked about enjoying the process, right? The activity, the behaviors, all of that, the grind being, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a good grind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And, grind is really just effort, right? Everything just takes effort. It's really just the effort, right? And adapting and overcoming, right? Writing it down, creating some of those things. And then the goals, right? It's like, I kind of talked about, like, just decide on this big goal anyway, right? Just decide that it's going to happen, and you're going to live in your own little world, and you're going to keep going towards it. And who would you be if that, Olympic event was still going to happen next year? If your state championship, if your sports, whatever thing, right? Your college, high school, whatever, right? What would you be doing? What would you be doing if that was actually going to happen in December? Like, right? You'd be like, okay, well, I got to figure this out. Got to be resourceful, right? And because you get to choose who you get to be is who you decide to be.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then how all of these things just tie into life, and the resilience factor of, getting through, because this is not going to be the last time something crazy happens in the world, right? That we don't have any control over. And then
20 left, so who knows what's going to happen.
there's a whole half a year.
Yeah.
And then you talked about the body mechanics, breaking down into little parts. We want you to be safe. We want you to prevent injury. We want you to have your dynamic warm-ups, the spinal stability, right? We want to really focus on that. And then that just leads you back into this mental, emotional agility and stability, for life, right? We want you to be functional in your life. We want you to be happy. We want you to be healthy, right? And all the rest is just a bonus.
Exactly.
Like, right? All the rest is just a bonus, like, right? But living your life and being present and enjoying the process, and, and enjoying your workouts and getting stronger and accomplishing things and becoming the next best version of yourself. I mean, that's just ultimately what life is.
Exactly.
Awesome. All right. Well, I don't see any questions, but so I'm going to let you talk about next week, the last in the series.
Yeah. So we're going to be right back here next week at 6 o'clock again for our final part of this 3-part series webinar. We'll be talking about the end of the journey, the journey always continues, but kind of that point where this time frame, this uncertainty time kind of ends and we ease back into transition, whenever that may be. And kind of that mindset and that physical process to get back to the point of let's go, it's time to go, it's showtime. And there's a big transition there. So it's going to be a fun talk, a lot of things to talk about. And we'll kind of recap on things that we've been talking these past 2 weeks about. So be a good one to tune in. If you missed out on anything that we've been talking about, we've been posting these recordings on our Facebook pages. And we'll also have
on
we'll
YouTube.
also have links on our YouTube pages as well, so you can check those out. And then we'll have all 3 up after next week. But again, we'll be back here same time next week, 6 o'clock for our last one. Hopefully you've enjoyed what we've talked about and can join us again next week. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Dr. Shu. It was great.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week.
You have a